There are millions of businesses all over the world, all of which need a proper valuation system in order to maintain and continuously improve their internal operations. Globalization, as well as economic pressures, have had a great effect on organizational cultures. This makes it even more important to continue reflecting on appraisal systems in use. According to Robinson Judge, employees are supposed to be flexible and cope with rapid changes. This in turn will require sets of skills and abilities which have to be evaluated for them to be maintained, in order to cope with keeping turnover rates as low as possible, but at the same time improve the abilities of their employees. Distinct techniques are of high value. With an overall market share of 35.3%, Heijn, as a subsidiary of Ahold Delhaize, is the largest supermarket chain in the Netherlands. A recent change in the company's appraisal systems, from focusing on values rather than employees' competencies, has inspired this research and the following research question: how managers at Albert Heijn perceive the current values-based appraisal system? We are aiming to combine intellectual as well as practical motives in our research, adding to existing knowledge and appraisal systems, and therefore aiming to improve techniques to retain employees, which poses a business problem in most corporations.
Creating effective teams is an important goal in order for organizations to be successful. Robinson Judge, writers of the book Organizational Behavior, discussed the team effectiveness model. The team effectiveness model consists of 4 contextual factors related to team effectiveness. These 4 factors are adequate resources, effective leadership, climate of trust, and a performance evaluation and reward system. Individual performance evaluations and incentives may interfere with the development of high-performance teams. Management should utilize hybrid performance systems that incorporate an individual member component and a group reward component to recognize positive team outcomes. The performance evaluation framework of Robinson Judge will be used to describe the properties of a performance appraisal. The framework provides 6 main objectives. The first objective is to define the purpose of the performance appraisal. For example, making decisions concerning retaining employees. The second objective is to define what to evaluate. Here the framework highlights 3 main criteria of appraisal. We've got individual task outcome, behavior, and traits of employees. The third objective in the framework is to determine who should conduct the appraisal. This is traditionally done by a superior. The fourth objective of the framework looks at the method of the appraisal itself. There are 5 different methods outlined in the framework. These are written essays, critical incidents, graphic rating skills, behavior-anchored rating skills, and forced comparison. The 5th objective is limiting biases during the appraisal process. And last but not least, the last objective in the theoretical framework is to provide performance feedback to the employee himself.
Which research method did we use and why? The proposed research will be carried out using inductive reasoning, meaning that the research will start by observing the participants through interviews in order to explore possible patterns and findings. This will lead to formulating a tentative hypothesis on which a final conclusion will be made. The analysis of the data will be done using tradition of grounded theory. In grounded theory, the data are systematically produced and studied in order to develop a theory. This will help us transform the explorative nature of our research into research more aimed at verifying results found early in the research. Ethics. Personal interviews are used to collect data on opinions and personal perceptions on the value-based performance appraisal. All interviewers will be prepared and trained before conducting the interview. This is to limit any possible confusion or misunderstanding and to ensure that the person being interviewed is comfortable with participating. The key factors in terms of interview-based research, where in-depth knowledge and understanding is aspired, are disclosure, anonymity, and confidentiality. All participants will be given a consent form and assured anonymity. Furthermore, they will be assured that the data collected will be used for the purpose of this particular research project only. The data will be known for the researchers and the teacher evaluating the assignment, otherwise it will be confidential. As comparative cases are used, all 5 participants are managers of Albert Heijn stores. We will be making use of the theoretical sampling. Access to the participants is given through one of our researchers' previous working relationships. The interviews will be conducted within the first 2 weeks of May. Data collection methods and coding. The use of semi-structured interviews allows the participants to answer freely, with the goal to receive a wider spectrum of answers while still focusing on the general direction of the research topic determined by the interviewers. The data collected in this research will be coded using open, axial, and selective coding. According to Boyer, open coding is the process of reading all data that have been collected up to that point and to divide it into fragments after detailed examination. These fragments will be grouped into categories dealing with the same subject. After the open coding process, axial coding will be used to put the data back together in new ways by making relations between categories. This way, we can separate dominant elements from less important ones. The last part of the coding process is the selective coding part, in which we will look for relations between the categories in order to logically interpret what is happening in the field. Issues of quality, limiting biases. Very important aspects that need to be taken into account are reliability, validity, and limiting biases of our collected data. Reliability refers to whether it is right to assume that the managers interviewed will provide data that could be evaluated with the same results on repeated trials and if the information we collect is accurate to that extent. As conducting a retest is not a feasible option in interview settings, improving reliability is not of significance. However, the accuracy and quality of the data gathered will be especially concentrated on as the interviews will be audio recorded so that no errors in the collection of information will occur. While strengthening our reliability refers to the accuracy of gaining the data, validity, on the other hand, is concerned with the question of whether or not the data collected represents the actual research question proposed. In order to increase validity, the questions for the interviews were carefully picked to ensure they are open questions corresponding to the open research question chosen. Biases influence the evaluation of the data collected as people unconsciously observe their data because of outside influences. The social desirability bias might lead to interviewed persons' answers being more what they think is more desirable to the interviewer. Furthermore, the confirmation bias might influence the interviewer to agreeing with the hypothesis posed, if a belief or assumption is formulated. In addition, the question order biases will have an influence if the order of the questions is not chosen correctly and might be biased in some way. In order to eliminate these biases, all questions chosen for the interview will be open questions, preventing biases in any direction with a carefully chosen order to not influence the answers. Furthermore, the location of the interviews will be in a separate space, so influence from other employees will also be prevented.